Welcome. It is January 15th, 2020, and oh my goodness, 2020, and it's already like midway into January. That's crazy. We are going to be talking today about facilities and events, specifically room reservations. We did a facilities and events session last year, meaning a few months ago, and we had such a great response to it that we decided to go ahead and create two sessions, two webinars in the spring to talk about facilities and events. This one is room reservations, and then we're going to do a follow-up one in February that's specific to inventory. And so it's not just me here. I am joined with Paige Parker. Paige, you want to say hi?
Hello, I had to find where the mute button was now because everything is different.
That's
But
right.
welcome.
So Paige is now a senior professional learning coach. We have different titles, and I am Joel. I'm the online learning manager. I'm also a senior professional learning coach as well. We are in the what used to be called the training team, but we're now the professional learning and coaching team. So we are very happy to be here and to share our knowledge with you. And we're going to get started pretty soon. So we used to use another product called GoToWebinar, and it had a questions box where you could post questions. A while ago, I did a test of our sound, and a lot of you were posting in the chat section. I'm not sure if you're seeing a chat screen. There's also something called a Q&A as well, where you can post questions, we believe should be on the screen. You can let us know in the chat if it is or isn't. But that is where that you can post questions, comments, compliments as we are going. So if I'm presenting, Paige can be answering questions. If Paige is talking, I can try to answer the questions that you post. So feel free to post questions as we are going. This is a recorded webinar, so just a reminder, when we do our Wednesday webinars, they are recorded. The difference with the software is that this software doesn't send out the link to the recording on the same day. So the recorded link will be sent to you tomorrow. That's new and different. But you will still receive that link to view the recorded webinars automatically. Whenever you register to attend a webinar, you automatically receive the invitation to view the live webinar. And then you also automatically receive the invitation to view the recorded webinar, but that's only if you have registered for that particular event. And then also all of our archived webinars are available in our help section. So when you click on help, if you go to this training and webinars section, there's the list of upcoming webinars, which are updated for the links to register for upcoming webinars through February. And then all of our past webinars are archived. They've been converted to YouTube videos. So when you go into the sections now, it's a link to each of the individual videos, but also there's a playlist. So this is an embedded YouTube video. It has 19 videos to it. If you click the button in the top right, it's going to show you all of the Strive webinar videos that we have released over the past few years, and you can view that information there. And the reason this is available as this is some of you have your own web page for training. You may have your own online course system where you could actually go to the YouTube channel, get the embed code, and then feel free to embed this playlist or individual videos into your website or your training vehicle for your staff to access. And that's in our help section. And it's past Strive, past Aware, Forethought, and then the logistical apps like FormSpace, Facilities and Events, and Help Desk are all kind of grouped together in this one. And yeah, so I think that's good. I think I covered that one pretty well. We have some events that are coming up next week. We have the ESC events still continuing through the spring. The ESC events take place at our various ESC partner facilities. So For example, Wednesday, January 23rd, we'll be in Victoria, Texas at Region 3. And then, oh, I was looking for the one that I'm going to be at, which is the one that's going to be in, let's see, are these the right ones? This is like, look at this. This is from 2019. Like I copied the wrong slide over, Paige. This is not the right events. So we're going to disregard this one, and maybe while you're speaking, Paige, I'll bring in and put it at the end, the current events. Like
That's a good plan.
I was just looking at this and it's like, no, these are not the right. I'm sorry, everyone. I copied the wrong slide over. But we will have the upcoming events. I realize this is a mistake because next week I'm going to be in Lubbock at the ESC Center there for their events. And so I was really hoping to promote that so people will come see me. But
The Region 3 event in Victoria is on the 22nd, not the 23rd. Not off by
correct.
much, but still.
The 23rd, I'll be in Lubbock. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover, again, this is all focused on facilities and events, specifically room reservations. I'm going to be sharing about roles and rights for facilities and events. And then we're going to go into reservations, how to make and view reservations, how staff members view the reservation process, and then also the workflows behind approval of reservations. We're going to show everything specific to managing the reservation process and making sure that it's working for you and for your needs for your district. This is a great time to be talking about facilities and events because things have kind of, hopefully for you, slowed down since the start of school, where you could kind of start planning, maybe using this for handling reservations at the district level or campus level for different events. In a few weeks, when we talk about inventory, it's also a good time to be talking about spending time inventorying campus and district, maybe technology or resources that are out there in a system that is built for managing these more easily for you. So we thought this was a good time to talk about facilities and events before we get into all the heavy testing and building our summer PD catalogs. And we hope that you enjoy this webinar and get some information from it that you can use with your district. Okay, I'm going to go over into facilities and events. I'm actually just going to, I'm going to actually exit from my presentation. I'm going to hop back and forth into it. But the one thing I want to talk about is in facilities and events, managing roles and rights is managed inside the application itself. And every other application, you would go to the management tool to manage the roles and rights for the users who would be accessing facilities and events. But the starting place for managing who's going to do what happens in the Manage tab in Facilities and Events and going to Manage Users. And in here you can search for a user, or you can just hit that magnifying glass. It'll list all your users in the system. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see the screen better. But the system administrator role would be the person who is going to manage all of the settings in the entire system. They may not be an approver. They may not be managing steps in a workflow, but this is the person who is going to be setting up the entire system, meaning assigning roles to other users, maybe creating the inventory, all the rooms inside of a campus or a building. That would be your system administrator role inside of facilities and events. The other roles that are available would be inventory manager. That may be a person who's just uploading or adding inventory information. If they're a principal, they may be a campus administrator so that they can be getting information for administrating for their own campus. There's a principal role that gives access to running reports. It also has some rights that are available where a campus principal, whenever they submit a request, it may not require prior approval. Then there's a public use manager. That's if you are creating reservation systems that would be available outside of normal business hours of your school. So you may have someone who handles outside of the campus level, approving requests that take place when the staff are not there. And then there's also reservation manager, which manages all reservations across the district. And these are all check boxes. And what that means is it indicates that whatever settings a person has selected in their profile would apply that role if it was selected for that specific campus, but there's not a way to separate out the different campuses. So when you're giving them, like system administrator, of course, would apply district-wide. A reservation manager would also be district-wide, but campus administrator, principal, and I think that's it. Those two are going to apply to whatever settings are in their profile for their campus that's selected. And that's where they would have that ability to make those changes. Rights also have specific rights that can be broken out to where you can customize for specific users. There's settings for management rights here, which would be managing all the settings and the calendars and everything. If you have someone who's doing inventory rights, you can set those individually here as well. The reservation rights would be in their own section. So you see how it's split out to where reservations are separate from inventory, and you can designate rights that way.
Hey, Joel,
Yes,
will
go
you
ahead.
click on like go back to roles and give somebody a role, like give somebody reservation manager or whatever.
Okay.
And then go to the rights and show them what that does.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to do that in a second.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted to show this though real quick.
Yeah.
So there is a usage right that some people will see in here that's not automatically selected, which is all requests do not require approval. And so I just want to make sure that people are careful with this right, because sometimes someone will go in and check this for themselves, just saying. And that means if you have a workflow in place for reserving an area, if someone has selected this right or it's been selected for them, then their request does not go through the workflow and it's automatically approved without someone approving it. This might be something that you would want to use for specific users where they kind of trump everyone else. Let's say a superintendent or the athletic director who wants to use their own facilities. Then you could select that right to assign to that one person, and that means their requests don't have to go through that process. So just know that this is here and it's available for those specific instances where you want to assign it specifically to someone. Okay, so let me go back to roles, and like she said, if I click on Reservation Manager and then save it, it's going to auto assign specific rights to that role that was selected. So it's going in there and seeing that. That was a reservation manager, so they're going to be able to view reservations, edit reservations, and edit form templates, but they are not able to edit workflows. They're not a public reservation manager, so they don't have those access areas that they would if they were given those other roles. If I give someone the system administrator role and then save and click on rights, you can see what all it's selected. And then this all requests do not require approval is not automatically selected with any role. You have to physically go into the rights tab to assign that. Does that help? I hope so. She's muted. It's okay, it happens. Assets is another type of management where you can assign specific campuses. So this is where you can delineate if someone is assigned to a specific campus, but you want to give them access to other buildings. Then you can go in, click the checkbox, and give them the access they need to those particular campuses. So you could have someone who is a reservation manager for only the elementary schools, and then go in there and select only the elementary schools that they would need access to. You can also, and we're going to talk about this in a second, room types, which is any room type you have, no matter its location, they may be managing that room type across the schools that were selected or the whole district. You can also select by what's called asset classes. These are the different types of items that you may be managing. So you could have someone who's managing just Chromebooks across the district and only select Chromebooks for that user that they'll be accessing. And then the last management piece is if you're using public calendars. This is a way to publish events that have been approved reservations. When a reservation goes through the process, and Paige will be covering this part, then a public calendar can be selected where those events are shared and then viewable through a unique URL that's been produced for that particular calendar. And the way this works is you create your calendar categories. Basically, all you're doing in here is just creating a name for the calendar. That's all it does, is create just a name. I always said this button should have a different name. It should just be called Name That Calendar, and then have a button, Name That Calendar, I guess, because all it does is just give you the name. But what happens is when you're in that Manage tab, Manage Users, and you are, let me go back to my little example person here, Mr. Stark, and you want them to publish events to a calendar, it takes from that list, and then you can assign which campus that calendar belongs to, or if it belongs to all of them, select it. And when they publish an event, it would publish to the specific calendar that was selected for them. And so all of these are managed again inside the Manage tab by someone who's the system administrator, who goes to Manage Users, can search for the user or pull down the list to go through all of users. All your teachers and staff, they have what's called basic access. They don't need roles and rights assigned to them. They already have access. This is when you're assigning specific management roles for the different sections. Questions on that page?
You're doing such a great job that there are no questions at this time.
Are you looking in both Q&A and chat?
I am.
Okay, good.
But I can't do both of those and manage my mute.
Okay.
I can only do 2 things, not 3.
Perfect. So those are the slides I had, but I went ahead and showed those. I do want to talk about this, just some terminology in the system. So rooms, it uses the term rooms in facilities and events when you're setting up your inventory, and the inventory is where you're going to store your rooms and also the contents of the rooms. But I think of rooms as containers for items or the assets, or a grouped set of assets. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical room. I have used this in districts. I used it for like mobile lab carts, and I created a room, and I'm using quotations, called Chromebook cart, for example. And then inside Chromebook cart, I could put in my specific assets, the items that are part of the inventory. But the room slash Chromebook cart was what could be reserved using the reservation process and workflow. So think of rooms not just as a physical room, but it could be a group set of assets in one container.
So I'm going to show my Harry Potter nerdiness and
Okay.
say, think of it as the room of requirement, because the room can be anything that you need it to be to set up a place for a reservation. So it doesn't have to be a physical room. Like Joel said, it could be a laptop cart. It's anything you need to reserve out.
I almost had to mute to stop myself from laughing out loud on that. Your Harry Potter.
Well,
yes.
You can laugh out loud at my Harry Potter nerdiness.
It's okay. I have the Star Wars nerdiness. Okay. Then there's another type of setting inside a facility and facilities and events, and that is room type. So I'm back in facilities and events, and one of the sections is creating your room types. And one of the common things that Paige and I do all of the training on facilities and events for districts. We see a lot of districts will come into room types and create very specific rooms. And that's not what you're wanting to do. You're wanting to create a type. And the type would be like just like a generic name. Let me see how I word it here. It's just a generic category description for a room. So you would not enter every classroom, but you might just enter the name of a room type as classroom. Another type of room type would be office, or like I have here, auditorium, or athletic facility. So you want to keep this very generic in your room type. So when you create a room type, it's just as simple as entering the name of it that you want to have in there. Because when you are going in and putting in your rooms at your building, you would select the room type. And the reason that's important is because when you are in here, and this is covered more in the inventory side, when you have a room type, you can select the type of items that you want to track for that specific room type. So a classroom, you may be wanting to look at the projector that's installed in the room versus a nurse's office where you don't necessarily have a projector mounted in their room. Depends on the district though. Sometimes that happens. But so this is just a very generic listing of your various room types. And then assets, that's a key word. Assets are the individual items that are inventoried inside of a room. So our example is Chromebook cart. Assets would be the Chromebooks that are in the cart, the plugs that are in the cart itself. And then categories would be your grouped asset types. Again, that's defined in the management side. So you have your room types and you have your asset categories. These are also very generic groups of items. So it's not where you list the HP Chromebook M101. You could just say Chromebook, or even break it out, teacher Chromebook, student Chromebook, ninth grade Chromebooks, if you wanted to break it up by grade level, but you just create a very generic category for that container. Am I doing so well that everyone's enthralled?
Yes,
Okay.
you are. And yes, they are.
Perfect. Well, now it's time for you to take over the presentation, Paige.
Okay, so now I have to find my share button.
I think I give it to you.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to give, well, no, that gives you mouse control.
I think you have to unshare yours.
Okay, I'm going to stop share.
Okay, now are you seeing mine?
Not yet. You have to click share.
Well, I did, but then I guess I did it too soon. We are so learning.
Live.
I love to learn live. Okay, now I'm going to close up the Q&A window that didn't have any Q's in it. All right, so we're going to talk about limiting reservations to a user's school. Sometimes you want to do that, sometimes you don't. We'll talk pros and cons. We'll talk about guest reservations, and then when you're setting up reservations, you have the option to create workflows and also templates, which is, to me, one of the strongest parts. Those two things, the workflows and the templates, are the strongest parts of using facilities and events rather than just using a calendar. So we'll talk about those items as we go forward. And so first, we're going to go to the General Options tab. So when you're in as a manager, and you click on the Manage tab on the left, you'll go to General Options at the top, and there are actually three things. Joel circled two. I'm going to give you a bonus, so you are lucky today to get this bonus. Up at the top, there is a checkbox that says Limit Reservations to the user's school, and that means if I'm at the middle school, I cannot reserve a room at the high school. I can only reserve rooms on my own campus. In some districts, that's a good thing and an important thing. Sometimes in smaller districts, they want people to be able to reserve whatever room they need at whatever campus they need. So this is sort of you have to determine what's going to be best for your users and check or uncheck that box. If I'm limited to my own school, then I could not, for example, reserve the district football field if we share a football field, or the auditorium at the high school for a program that I was doing. I would have to reserve something only at my middle school. So you can determine yes or no to whether or not they can reserve at other schools by checking that box. That doesn't mean that they're going to trump anybody else or use up all the rooms, because you're still going to have a workflow that's going to control who gets what. This is just for them to be able to make a reservation and request a room at campuses other than their own. The other one that's checked down here is guest reservations, and you can set it up so that people outside your district can be given guest rights, and they can go in and reserve facilities in your district. So if you look over on the left-hand side here in the menu, there is a Manage Guests button right there under Manage Users, and you can go in and create accounts for people, and then they can log in themselves and reserve rooms for themselves without having to call the school secretary and get them to put it in for them. This would probably only apply if you have someone who's there a lot. If you have a Boy Scout troop or Girl Scout troop that meets on one of your campuses every week, and they're going to be reserving different rooms for different activities that they're doing, it might be worth your while to set that person up and let them reserve their own rooms. It might be that the school secretary wants to be in charge of that and they just call her instead. That's again dependent on the size of the school, the district, and how often this person comes in. If you have people that come in from your educational service center, but they only come maybe once or twice a year, it's probably not worth creating them as guest users and letting them request their own rooms. It's probably easier to have them coordinate with somebody in your district and make those. But you do have the ability to set that up. And if you do set up guest reservations, you have this box here that says, oops, this box here that says public reservations, terms and conditions. You can type in just sort of a general policy statement saying that the facilities belong to the district and we expect this, this, and this from our guests who reserve rooms from us. So you can sort of put a policy in there. It's kind of like an acceptable use policy, but for your facilities, not your technology. And then your bonus is this check mark right here, which to me is important because for the most part, I don't want to check it, but a lot of people when they come in, they say, she said to check things on here, let me just check them all. This one will allow concurrent pending reservations, which means if Joel goes in and tries to reserve the auditorium for 10 o'clock on Tuesday, and then 10 minutes later, I go in and I want the auditorium at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, it's going to let both of us reserve it. And so we're both going to think we're good to go. Now, we still haven't been approved. It hasn't gone through the workflow. We haven't received the approval, but in our heads, it went through. We're good. And so you end up getting a little bit of confusion sometimes if they're allowed to create concurrent reservations. If you don't check that, then after Joel made his reservation and I go in and try to do Tuesday at 10 o'clock, it's not even going to show the auditorium as being available. It's just not, auditorium's not going to be in the list. So I won't have the ability to try to make a reservation. I will know somebody else already has it at that time. So that can help, keeping that unchecked can help you not have some of those misunderstandings.
Can I add in?
Yes.
So the flip side of that
yes.
is if you are using reservations with like a mobile lab where there is overlap. So a teacher says, well, I'm going to use the mobile cart between, and they put in the actual classroom time, which may be 10:17 to 11:12. And then someone goes in and says, well, I'm going to use it from 11 till 12, then it would not allow them to reserve. So if you are going to be using things where you are needing that little bit of overlap, then you would have to check that box.
Yes, that is a good point. And sometimes for laptop carts, having someone manage them for the day might be a better solution than trying to get it all to fit in here. So you kind of have to look at overall, we want it to be this way. We have this one exception. Let's see if there's another workaround. Or overall, it's going to be a free-for-all and anybody can reserve what they want to reserve and we'll work it out later. So it just depends on your district and your people and whether they'll come to fisticuffs over it. And then you figure out the system that's going to work. That's one of the great things about, well, really all the Eduphoria products is that they are completely customizable and you know your people and which way is going to make the more sense to them. Okay, so we've alluded to workflows a couple of times, and now we're going to talk about exactly what they can do. And those of you who are familiar with FormSpace know about workflows. It's going to give you a process, whereas a calendar, I'm just putting something on a calendar and it's there. With the workflow, I can have approval steps and I can have notification steps. So I'm going to jump on over to my system and I'm going to go into my reservation workflows and just take a look at one of them. So there are two built-in workflows. In fact, let me go to inventory and I'm going to go to a room. There are two ways that you can get to apparently, oh wait, sorry, lost my mind for a second. I want it to be at the high school. So if I go into a room and I can see that, as Joel said, the room is really a container and I can reserve the room, but within that room I also have some assets. So in this case, I have a Chromebook that's assigned to that room. When I go in to edit the room, then I can see what my reservations look like. In this case, I don't have, this room is not able to be reserved right now. If I want to be able to reserve it, I'm going to say it can be reserved. And then for this individual item, I could allow concurrent reservations or not. So if I don't allow the concurrent reservations on the main page that we were just looking at, under Manage General Options, if I don't allow them there, but I do want them for this single room, I can still give it to them for this one room. So this may be the workaround for the Chromebooks, whereas classrooms or your other types of rooms cannot have concurrent reservations. Maybe your Chromebook carts can because you need that overlap time. Whenever I say that it can be reserved, you'll notice that these things popped up down at the bottom. This is where I would select my workflow for this specific classroom. So I have one room and I have all these options of what the process is going to look like. The two that are built in are no approval needed, which means if I click that and save it, then anybody who signs up for this room, it's just going to automatically go through. Nobody has to know anything, do anything, that's it. The other option that's built in is to have the asset manager approve it. And so in order for us to use that one, we've got to have a manager assigned up here. So I could say I'm going to add a manager. Maybe this is my classroom. So I'm going to find my name and I am the person now who would approve if somebody wants to reserve my room for some activity. There is an inside school hours reservation workflow. There is an outside school hours reservation workflow, which can be the same or it can be different. And then there is a public reservation workflow, which you can set to be whatever you want it to be. The public one means those guest users could reserve my room if they wanted to. So the Boy Scout troop could use my classroom, but right now they have to get my approval because I'm the asset manager. So I could go in and set that up and say I want to save it, and now anybody who tries to reserve Classroom 101, I'm going to get notified and I have to go in and approve that reservation. But maybe we have some other things going on that apply to other rooms. So I'm going to go back out to the Manage tab. I'm going to get out of this one room and go back to the Manage tab. So one way I can access the workflows is when I'm in a room and I'm assigning the workflows to that room. The other way that I can access them is from the Manage tab. I can go to Reservation Workflows and I see all of those items in the list. What I don't see in this list is the two built-ins because you can't change those. You can't do anything with them, so they're not even going to show up here. It's kind of like credit types in Workshop. So we still have asset manager and no approval required as workflows. They just don't show up here. And if I wanted to make a new one, I could make a new one. Again, one of the pitfalls that we see in training is that people will say, okay, well, I have to have a workflow for every room because it's always going to be a different person. That's not necessarily true. I could say my workflow is that it goes to the asset manager and then it goes to the building principal. That could apply to every classroom. So I'm going to say, let me pick this demo, and I'm going to just make a new one. So I'm going to say new workflow, and it's going to be called classrooms. So for all my classrooms, I can use this process. My first workflow step is going to be an approval process, and I'm going to come down to the bottom and say, I'm going to pick the asset manager. So whoever is assigned as the asset manager for that room, it's going to go to them first, and I'm going to save it. And my second step is going to be an approval step, and it's going to go to a group, and that group is going to be, when I scroll down, my building principals. Building principals is a custom group that I created in management, so I can use them in situations like this. You will have a system group that's called principals, and it has the wrench on it. That means it's pulling data from their profile. But since in the profile there's no distinction between principals and vice principals, is what the profile calls it, if you pick this group, it's going to go to every assistant principal as well as the building principal. So that's why I created my own custom group and called it building principals. I have to manage that myself. So every year I have to go in and check who left, who replaced them, who got promoted from the middle school, what all changes are there, and get my building principals list corrected. But once I've done that, I can say save. Oh, one other little do that I want to pull up here. While I am setting this step up and I have it set to be my building principals group, I want to check this little box over here that says limit to school. That way, if I am at the middle school, it's going to go to the asset manager for this room, and it's going to go to the building principal for the middle school, the school where I am. So that's how the process is going to go. If I don't check this little box, it's going to go to every building principal, and they don't want to get all that kind of email. So I want to limit it to the school, and it'll be the school of the requester that it goes to. And so then I'll save that step. And then maybe, because this is an after school thing that they're probably going to be requesting, I want some notification steps. Maybe I want another group, and it's going to be my, let's see if I have do I have a secretary's group there? I do not.
You have a facility services, maybe letting whoever manages the facilities.
There we go. So the facility services people would be able to get a notification just so that they know something's going on. I could limit it to the school if that's necessary. So they're going to get a notification. And then also maybe I want to notify a specific staff member. So I'm going to come up here and say Milo is my HVAC guy. So I want Milo to know that I need air conditioning for my after school meeting. So I want to notify them that this is going on so that they'll keep the air on for me. And maybe I also want to go in and do a notification step to my custodian. Let me see what I have if I type in Smith. Okay, so Carlton Smith is my head custodian, and I want him to know also. So all three of these people are just going to get a notification. And in terms of timing, when it goes to the asset manager, it's going to stop there until the asset manager clicks approve. Then it's going to go to the next step, and it will stop here until the building principal clicks approve. But when it goes to notification, it's just going to be boom, boom, boom. 3 in a row. They happen almost simultaneously because they don't have to stop and wait for anything. They're just notification steps. So if I'm using this method, it's going to work for every classroom on my campus because it's going to go to the specific asset manager. I didn't put a person's name in there. I put a group, whoever's assigned to that room. Same for building principals. I didn't put a specific person. I just put the group. And then these specific people are going to apply to everybody. So I can use that same workflow classrooms for room 101, which we were just looking at, or room 201 or 301, or however many rooms I have. So I can create a workflow that applies to multiple rooms by using these groups rather than putting a specific person's name in there. And then I'm going to save that. And I can click this process button that will process any that have been hanging out there waiting on my stuff to happen. So that's where I can create workflows. Now I want to show an example here of I have 4 different curriculum and instruction training rooms, and they all have a workflow. So this one's the downstairs training room, the upstairs training room, the downstairs training room after hours, and the upstairs training room. So this one I guess is after hours too. So I have 4 different workflows. But if I look closely at them, they all have 1 approval step and 3 notifications. The approval is Carlton Smith on this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. So they all have the same first step. And then the other 3 are notification steps. This one goes to Carolyn, then Caitlin, then Michelle. This one goes to Michelle, then Carolyn, then Caitlin. This one goes to Carolyn, then Michelle, then Caitlin. But it's the same 3 people on all 3 of them. Now remember I said these 3 things happen pretty much simultaneously? There's really no need to have 4 different workflows for this. They're all going to go to the same person for approval, and they're all going to notify these 3 people. If the order matters, if you don't want the second person to get it until after the first person gets it, it needs to be an approval step, because the notification steps do not stop and wait. So you can kind of go through and look at your workflows and see, when I look at this one, I would probably pick one, rename it curriculum and instruction, period. I would take off upstairs, downstairs, and after hours, and I would have one workflow that applied to all 4 of these situations. Because you want to have the workflows be as clean as you can so it's not confusing when you go to set things up. Okay, any questions about workflows?
I have not seen any questions.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my inventory and go back to the classroom that we were looking at just a minute ago. I go into Blue High School, and I'm going to go into that room 101 and edit my room. Again, when I'm in my reservations, I can say Asset Manager, or I could come down and use the one we just created that was called Classrooms. And I could say that's the process that we're going to use on all of them. The Asset Manager one goes only to the Asset Manager. The one we created called Classrooms goes first to the Asset Manager, then to the building principal, and then notifies the HVAC person and the facilities person and the custodian. So maybe I want to change it to that. That's fine. And then when I come down a little bit below there, I have the ability to set up a reservation form. Right now it's set to none. I can say I want to use an existing template. And if I say I want to use an existing template, it's going to show me a drop-down menu of the templates that I have. So I have one that's for reserving an athletic facility. I have one that's for a Zoom meeting, which is like what we're doing here, a webinar. And then I have one that says a meeting or professional development request. So maybe I think that's the one I want. I'm going to click this preview form and see what that looks like. And this is something that your users are going to see when they go in. Okay, so it's not previewing for me. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to leave that set the way it is and say save. And then I'll go back to my manage and look at my forms over here. So I can look at my reservation form templates there. Not sure why it didn't preview for me. The reason I wanted to preview it there is because sometimes it shows the text is grayed out here, and I know that's hard for y'all to read. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. But this is where I can build whatever questions I need to ask. What do you need to know if somebody's going to reserve a room? In this case, I have the name of the requester. What kind of meeting is it? How many participants will there be? Does it require substitutes? And then I can have other questions down here. Do you consider it to be a meeting? And then the options is it a meeting or is it a training session? That's all I got on this one. If I go to my athletic facility, then it's going to ask what's the organization that's reserving it. what's the specific purpose? Is it for-profit or nonprofit? Is it really an athletic event or just some other type of event? Who's your contact person and their cell phone number, and when do you need to set up? And then what other support staff do you need? And then what other things do you need? Concessions? Do you need the access to the locker rooms, the PA system, press box, public restrooms, scoreboards? Those are all things they want to know about. I've seen some where the athletic facility event form says, do you want the bleachers pushed in or pushed out? Things like that. Do I need, scoreboard we talked about. So just whatever the things are that you want to know that people need to know to set up for the event, you put them here in this form. And you can create a new form if you want to. So I could come over here and say, create form template. And I'm going to call this one classrooms. And then maybe my first question is going to be a multiple choice question. And it's going to say, what equipment do you need to access in the room? And then my options are going to be that I need the projector. I'm going to add that in. And I said multiple choice, but really this needs to be a multiple selection question. So I need to delete that one. And before I delete it, well, I did delete it. So let me get this one, and I'm going to say, what equipment do you need? And then one option is going to be a projector.
I want to see how you spell it this time. There we go.
How did I spell it last time?
Oh, there were a few letters out of place.
First of all, I'm a terrible speller, and then I'm a terrible typer in front of people. And then I also need maybe the screen. If there's a key to the screen and I need to be able to pull that down, do I need a remote for anything? What other stuff is in that room? And then that will be a question that they can do as a, let me delete that one.
That's going to delete the form. Click the delete question.
There it is up there. No.
You got to close that box.
It won't let me get out of it.
Click close on the bottom left.
There we go.
There you go. And then it's delete question.
Okay, that one to, there it is. Okay, so I have one question in there, and then I could go and say I want to add another question. Maybe it's a text box where I'm going to get them to describe the activity. I can have a calendar where they pick an alternative date. If the date that they're requesting here is not available, I could say, calendar question, what is your first choice alternate date? And so I'll save that. And because I made it a calendar question, they get to go in and pick from a calendar. So you can set up your forms to be whatever you want them to be, and then I'll just save that as a form template. I can come back to it and edit it until I actually tie it to a room and have somebody asking the questions, and then I won't be able to edit that template anymore. So if I go back into my inventory and look at my classroom that we've been playing with, I'm going to go back into 101, edit the room, my reservations. Now when I come down to the templates, I have that classroom template, and those are the questions they're going to get when they reserve this question. We're not going to talk about our fee schedules today. That's a whole nother session, but I'm going to go ahead and save this room and then talk about what the end user sees and what the management can see.
And Paige, before you continue, or
Yes.
if you want to set up for the next, I want to say this. So in one of my roles in a district where I was over technology, I was also managing the fine arts facility for the district and moved them to using facilities and events because of the ability to manage multiple workflows for different spaces. And one thing that we did, and I think about buildings that might have a multi-purpose room where the room has flexible seating that can be moved around.
Yes.
I loved using a reservation template that outlined, do you need tables and chairs? do you need tables of 6 with chairs, or tables of 8 with chairs, or tables of 12? And like being able to limit to specific setups that were predetermined with the staff, the custodial staff, who would set up that space. And then that way, all of the information was in the form, and then using the workflow to notify the person by email, this is going to be the setup for the space. It saved so much time. We even had a question that was, are you planning to have food in the room, or food and drinks in the room, so that we could prepare to have the larger trash cans in there with the bags in them,
Yep.
to make the whole thing work easier. Okay.
And that's an excellent point. In my previous district, we had the same issue. And in my building, we had 2 rooms. One, they were on either side of the foyer, and they had similar numbers, and everybody got confused between which one was which. They didn't know them by the room names very well. So we could have changed the room title, and that's what I would have done if I had the magic wand. But what we did instead is upload photographs, and you can upload multiples here. So while it was set up as with round tables, 10 top round tables, they took a picture and they uploaded that picture here. And then the next time it was set up in theater style with all chairs, they took a picture of it like that, and they uploaded that photograph, so that there were 3 pictures here, so that people could see if this room was going to meet their needs in one of these 3 setups. And then when they got to the form, they could say which setup they wanted. So you can add images, you can change the name. The room number is important if you're tying to help desk, because it needs to be the same as what help desk has, but the room title can be different if you need for it to be different. So I usually like to leave the room number in the title, but then I could say by the water fountain for the room that was the ones that they got confused, or whatever it is that you need to put in there. So those are ways that you can help your reservers give you better information with the form, with the pictures, and with the title. Thank you, Joel.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to jump over to reservations, and I'm going to be a user for a minute, and I'm going to make a reservation. And I'm going to go to the high school. I'm going to go to a standard classroom. I'm going to say I need 1 classroom, and I need it on Friday. Not giving them much time, but maybe I need it all day. So I'm going to say I need it from 7:30 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon. That's our school hours. And I'll select PM, and then I'm going to click next. And it's going to show me all the classrooms that are available at the time that I requested. So the room that I was looking for happens to be there. No other rooms are there, not because everybody's got stuff reserved, but because I haven't turned on reservations for all my other classrooms. But if all the classrooms were turned on, it would list every classroom that is available at the time that I asked, unless I said concurrent reservations were okay. Then it's always going to show me all rooms all the time, whether they're already reserved or not. So I could go in from here and say, I can click on the room from my list, say next, and then I'll go in and put in a title. So I'm going to have a party after school.
Woo.
And just because. And so here is my form that is tied to this room. It asked me the question, what equipment do I need? Well, I'm showing a movie at my party, so I need these things. And then if I can't do it this Friday, then I want to do it February 7th. So
Definitely during school.
So I have added, definitely not Saturday. I have added in my form questions and my information, and I'll say next. And now it's gone through, and you'll notice over here, it says it's pending approval because the asset manager has to approve it. After the asset manager approves it, it's still going to say pending because it has to go to the building principal. And then after the building principal has approved it, it will turn green. And it'll say approved, and I will know that I'm good to go. So that's what it looks like on the user's end. If I wanted to make another reservation, and this time I go in and I say I want a standard classroom and I want it on Friday at 10 a.m., that's fine. And I'm going to say next. And it says no possible items are found. The reason it doesn't have any items is because the only room that would have been available is 101, and that's already reserved, and I don't allow concurrent reservations. So because like I don't have the time I want, I could either keep changing it. Well, let me try 11 o'clock. Let me try 12 o'clock. Let me try. I could go back and forth, but I have another option. I can come up here and say I want to browse for my item. It's going to bring me over here and show me all the standard classrooms that are available. I'm going to say I want 101, and I can see, okay, somebody's got it all day on Friday. All right, that's fine. I'll go to next week and I will pick Monday of next week. So I can click on Monday, and then I can say I want it at 7:30 on Monday, and I can change my end time to 3:30. And when I do it this way, I still have to put in my title, and the reason is optional, but it's helpful. But then when I have to go to additional information to see my form questions. So it looks a little bit different when I do it here. It's not all on one screen, but I still have access to everything that's there. I would put my information in and then click submit, and it would go on to the approvers that way. So your end users can go in and find their rooms two different ways. As a manager, I want to go into reservations and I want to see all requests for my campus. And it's going to show me everything that's here. I wish I had some more stuff. Let me change my beginning date. I'll go back a couple years just to get us some stuff in the list. And say update. And so now I have more things in my list because I have a longer time period, but we're going to pretend like this is an average week. I can set whatever parameters I want up here. So I could say, just show me what I have going on this week. I can't think 2 weeks in advance. I just want to see 1 week at a time, and I'll deal with that. So I can set my parameters and get the dates that I want. When it's here, I can see everything that's going on, but maybe I need to figure out who needs to know what. I can grab the asset name and drag it up here, and it's going to sort my list now by asset. So room 101 has a reservation. Room 102 has several reservations. The boardroom has several reservations, and there's a bus that's been reserved. So I can see in my time period here what rooms I'm dealing with. Well, maybe the boardroom goes to one custodian and these classrooms go to a different custodian. I can print out and give them the information so that they can see what they need to be prepared for that week that's coming up. If I'm not so much interested in the assets, I can go and say, well, tell me about the requester. Sometimes this is where you're going to find out who your room hogs are. Let me want to undo what I had done. And
Ungroup.
Do you see a button that says ungroup?
On the top right, under
Thank you.
help.
Thank you.
We help each other.
Yes. So I'm going to say I want to look at it by requester, and I can see, okay, this one user is kind of a room hog. They're using that room maybe more than is fair to the other teachers in their department. So I can sort by requester if I want to, or I can ungroup and sort by something else. So you can figure out what it is that you need to be looking at and sort and look at the lists this way. And then the last thing that I want to show you is I can go in if I was the approver, and I'm not. So let me see. Who is the approver on this one? I am. Let me see if I can log in.
I think there's multiple approvers, so you may have multiple hot points.
Okay, so what I want to be able to do is go in, and what the approver will do is see this request is pending approval, and they will have a button that says approve, which I do not have. So I need to get one that I can do that way. Let me go to manage, and I'm going to go to I need to go to
Inventory.
inventory. Thank you. Inventory, and I'm going to change the approver here. I'm going to set it to be reservations. It's going to be add a manager.
You may have changed the workflow for classrooms.
That's what I meant. Well, no, it didn't change the workflow for them. It just changed the asset manager here. And I'm going to remove that name as, so I'm going to say save. But then I probably need to go back and process it again. So if I go back into my workflows, go to classrooms, and then say I want to process them. Hopefully that did it. And we'll go back to reservations and see. Okay, so now.
You have to go down to show all requests, right?
Well, I mean, I'm here. It says it's pending approval, but it's still not letting me do it. Anyway, what I wanted to show you is, and I'm out of time, but there would be a button here that says approve. So if I was the approver, I could approve this reservation. Oh, let me go back and grab the other one. Nope, that's right. So I would be able to approve the reservation, and then there's going to be a button that allows me to add it to a calendar.
Yeah, click on pending my approval down there on the bottom. See if it'll show there.
Gotta get out. Yeah, see, it's still not thinking that I'm the right person.
Yeah, that's right.
So I need to log back in and log into somebody else, and I'm not going to spend y'all's time on that. But what it would do is give me the option of adding it to a calendar. And Joel talked about the calendars earlier. I can have district calendars or I can have campus calendars. And I could have a campus athletics calendar or a district athletics calendar. For this, I might want to put it on the high school athletics calendar if it was an athletic event. And so I would click on that on the reservation and say that it would show up there. Once I did that, I can come over here and grab this URL, or I can add an embed code to put it on the website. So you could go to your campus website and put that URL or that embed code on your campus site. And instead of having to put them in facilities and events and then go to a calendar on your campus site and put them in there also, the campus calendar could be this calendar. So once you add them to this calendar, they automatically post to your campus page. That can take a step out of your process and make it a little bit easier for you to get all of the things in the right place. So the calendar is a really nice addition if you are putting things out there for the public to be able to see.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Any questions hanging out there?
I answered one. The question was, does it email you when your request is approved, or do you have to go in and keep checking?
Okay, and the answer is you have to check. Well, actually, no, if you're an approver, you do get an email.
Yes.
If you're the requester, you have to check unless somebody put a notification step in there with your name.
Right.
So if you're the approver, yes, you get an email and it has all the details, including details from the form. But if you are the requester, you have to go in and look unless they set up a notification step that goes back to the requester. Mm-hmm. So if you want everybody to get an email, that's an option. You can set it up that way.
Perfect.
If you have other training needs, please let us know. We do on-site training if you want to purchase some training hours, and we also do customized webinars if you want us to do something that's specific to your district. But as Joel showed you earlier, we also have hundreds of articles and videos out there on demand that you can look at anytime. Just let us know what your needs are and we can try to help you find the right solution.
And Paige, well, go back and refresh your screen and it should show the next slide would be the one I messed up earlier.
Oh, okay. So
should be.
Okay, refresh is happening
now we have
slowly.
to wait 20 minutes.
Yep.
For it.
It's waiting and waiting and waiting.
I think I put it there at the bottom and at the top again.
Okay.
But let's see.
There we go. So now we have the right dates here. Oh, now I'm going to make it load again. Sorry. So Victoria is this coming week on the 22nd, and Lubbock is on the 23rd. Beaumont is coming up in February on the 17th, and then San Angelo March 24th. And you can go to any of those ESC websites to register for those events. And remember, these are the ESC events, not roadshow events. So it's not hands-on in-depth training, but it is a great resource for seeing what other districts are doing, how they're using the products, and also to network with other schools in your area or the same size that you are or that have the same needs that you have. So those are great ways for you to meet people and talk to them.
And they are free.
Yes, they are
well.
free. That is also a big bonus.
Yes.
And then, of course, we have TCA coming up, which is our big one. If you're there, come by the booth. We always have a booth, and we have some fun stuff lined up for this year.
Very
Top
exciting.
secret, can't tell about it. But do come by and see us. And then I don't know if this group is going to be the one showing up at TASA Midwinter, but we will have a booth there as well. You can send your administrators by if they're going to be there. We do have some upcoming webinars. Next one up is Strive, not this coming week because we're all traveling, but the week after that. And then, as Joel mentioned earlier, we have our second F&E, the inventory portion, coming up in February, and then Aware following that. We will have additional webinars posted coming soon. Again, we just got Zoom and we're trying to get it all figured out and set up. So we'll have more of them posted out there very, very soon. And thank you for joining us. We hope you have a great week. Joel, anything else you need to throw in there before we sign off?
I mean, I could talk for days, but I will let everyone go back to work. Thank you all for joining us.
If you do have any questions that you think of after, you are always welcome to email training@eduphoria.net, and one of us will get back in touch with you. Thanks a bunch for your time.